Imagine treating your psychological or spiritual growth exactly like your 401k or, I don't know, your gym routine.
Yeah.
Like highly structured, brutally measurable, and entirely visible.
Right, because usually when we talk about personal development, we wander into this landscape that is incredibly murky. It's very vague.
Oh, totally. People throw around these abstract, sweeping phrases like, find your center or be a better person. And that leaves you with absolutely no idea what you're actually supposed to do on a Tuesday morning.
Exactly. We crave the clear metrics of physical training, right? The sets, the reps, the progressive overload, but we just default to these vague aspirations when it comes to human character.
Yeah, there's no pedometer for the soul.
Yeah.
Which makes it very easy to just stall out entirely.
Right.
Well, today, welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at a text that completely flips that dynamic for you. We're unpacking an excerpt from a spiritual address delivered at a religious sacrament meeting.
Which is essentially a weekly church worship service, right? Where a local congregation gathers.
Exactly. And in this address, the speaker lays out a concept they explicitly call the Lord's Workout Program.
I love that title.
It's great, right? It is a 5-step regimen designed to build what they call spiritual muscle. And regardless of your personal religious background, what makes this document so captivating is the operational logic behind it.
Yeah, it reads remarkably like a modern productivity manifesto, but, applied directly to human empathy and resilience.
Right. So our mission today is to examine the psychological mechanics embedded in this text. The speaker takes these ancient concepts of faith and systematically fuses them with actionable daily routines.
It really provides a fascinating case study in how to take the ethereal concept of growth and construct a mechanistic system, a system that you can actually deploy in your own life immediately.
So let's just jump right in. Any structural system has to start with raw material intake, right?
Yeah.
Like in physical training, you need protein, and you literally have to lift the weight.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah. And in this text, the speaker argues that the foundational material is the intake of profound information, trusting the power of divine words, scripture, or, deep philosophical texts.
And the speaker uses a really blunt analogy here, which I think is great.
Oh, the push-cup analogy.
Yeah. They say if you haven't opened your text today, it is biologically equivalent to skipping your push-ups.
I love that because the cognitive reframing there is highly deliberate. We often associate reading spiritual or complex text with, a sense of obligation.
Or guilt. Like it's homework.
Exactly, like homework. But the speaker pivots away from that entirely. They're basically saying, if you want a physical adaptation in your body, you must apply physical stress to a muscle fiber.
And if you want a psychological adaptation, like if you want to handle the friction of your daily life with more patience, you have to apply the stress of new complex ideas to your mind.
Right. But the text moves past just the simple advice to, read more. It introduces this mechanism called a spiritual journal.
But it frames this notebook in a very specific way, doesn't it?
Yeah, you aren't treating it like a diary where you log what you had for lunch or how the weather is. You are instructed to treat it as a literal spiritual inbox for personal messages.
A spiritual inbox. I mean, that is such a corporate productivity term.
It totally is. The idea is you read something, a specific concept resonates with your current situation, and you capture it immediately in this inbox.
And capturing it physically is the crucial mechanism here. When you simply read a passage, the information, it just stays in your short-term working memory.
And usually vanishes within hours, right?
Exactly. By forcing yourself to articulate why a passage matters and actually writing it down, you engage in metacognition. You are thinking about your own thinking.
It is essentially building a customized data scraping tool for your own brain.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
You are indexing what your subconscious finds important on any given day.
And that index quickly becomes a diagnostic map of your own vulnerabilities. Think about it. If you review that inbox after a month and see you have saved like 10 different quotes about overcoming anger,
your brain is signaling a deficit it is trying to fill.
Right. You are turning passive consumption of text into active, trackable data regarding your own mental state.
Okay, but that data collection only matters if it alters your behavior in the real world. So the text moves from building the muscle to applying it, and it uses this surprisingly mundane example.
The car keys.
Yes, the car keys. The example is praying to ask, Lord, please find my car keys. And, we have probably all bargained with the universe in a moment of minor panicked crisis.
The classic desperate plea for external intervention.
Yeah. But the text brings this up to address a major misconception about faith, which is the idea that it requires total passivity.
Right.
And here is where I genuinely struggle with the premise of the text, and I want to push back on this idea for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
The speaker insists that after you pray for the keys, you literally have to do the physical work to find them yourself. You are told to list what you can actively do and then execute a search plan.
Right, prayer with action.
But doesn't that defeat the entire purpose of the prayer? I mean, if faith is supposed to be about surrendering to a higher power, and I have to tear apart the couch cushions anyway, what is the prayer actually accomplishing? It feels entirely redundant.
Well, if you view prayer merely as a transaction where you ask for a service and God delivers it like room service, then yeah, it is redundant.
It's like a cosmic bellhop.
Exactly. But the text frames prayer as an internal activation sequence. Think about the psychological trap of relying entirely on external forces to solve your problems.
You mean like giving up control?
Yeah, you quickly slide into learned helplessness. Your brain internalizes the belief that your own actions just do not matter.
So you just sit on the couch waiting for the keys to magically appear on the coffee table. You know, obviously never happens.
Right. On the flip side, if you just tear up the house in a panic without pausing, you spike your cortisol.
Oh, I've been there.
We all have. You operate from a state of pure distress, which actually narrows your vision. So the text advocates for this hybrid approach. Prayer with action.
So it bridges external reliance and internal agency.
Exactly. When you pause to ask for help, you lower your physiological arousal, you calm your nervous system down. Then, when you immediately outline an action plan, you generate self-efficacy.
So it sounds like you are programming the reticular activating system in your brain.
Spot on.
You pause, you clearly define the target, the lost car keys, which primes your subconscious to notice them in your environment. And then you provide the physical labor to let your brain do its job.
You retain an internal locus of control while utilizing a sense of external support to keep the panic at bay. The text actually argues that God grants power precisely at the moment of human effort, not during human passivity.
Oh, interesting. So the physical action itself is a mechanism that unlocks the capacity to find the solution.
Exactly.
Okay, so if action is the engine that drives this whole process, intuition has to be the steering wheel, right?
Yeah.
We need to know where to direct that energy once we are moving.
Right, you need a compass.
And the text calls this coaching the inner voice, or the spirit. And it makes a stark distinction here. It says, this voice is rarely a loud, flashing siren or a burning bush. It is almost always a quiet, calm whisper.
Which presents a severe logistical problem in the modern world.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
Because our steering wheel is jammed by 1,000 different notifications.
Constant noise.
Yeah. And the text gives these incredibly subtle examples of what this whisper actually looks like in practice. It's not grand revelations. It is a sudden, fleeting thought to show kindness to a stranger while you are standing in line at a fast food restaurant.
Just a tiny nudge.
Right. Or a random mental nudge to call a divorced mother just to check in. These are micro prompts. And the text contains this quote that frames the dynamic beautifully, I think.
What's the quote?
It says, "We might be too busy, but the Lord is even busier. Yet, he still tries to speak to us."
Wow. The implication there is that the signal is constantly broadcasting, but our receivers are entirely overloaded.
Yes. And to combat this, the text introduces a practice simply called quiet time. This means intentionally stepping away from digital devices after a meal or during a walk, strictly to listen.
Now, the obvious comparison here is the modern digital detox movement.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
But a standard digital detox is usually about decompression, right? Lowering screen time just to stop the eye strain or drop your baseline anxiety.
Right, it's about subtraction.
Yeah. But this feels like a different mechanism entirely. It is like adjusting the signal-to-noise ratio in audio engineering. You aren't just turning down the volume of the noise for the sake of quiet. You are turning it down to isolate a very specific low-frequency signal.
You are creating the cognitive bandwidth required for your brain's default mode network to function.
Oh, the default mode network. Tell me more about how that fits in here.
So when you constantly consume podcasts, music, and texts, your brain remains in a perpetual state of task-positive processing. It's just reacting to external stimuli.
You're just constantly putting fires out mentally.
Basically. But when you enforce actual silence, the default mode network kicks in. This is the neural network responsible for self-reflection, contemplating the past, and crucially, thinking about the mental states of others.
Wait, really? The empathy part of the brain needs silence to activate?
Yeah. That quiet time is literally the biological prerequisite for noticing that you should check on that divorced mother. You physically cannot hear the empathy cue if your brain is fully occupied processing a social media feed.
That is wild. So the silence is not a break from the workout. The silence is the exercise itself.
Exactly. You train your attention to pick up on the subtleties of human need around you.
Okay, so once you tune your receiver to pick up those cues, they inevitably direct your actions outward toward other people. This is principle 4. And the text argues that practicing love and service to others isn't just like a moral obligation.
Right. It's not just about being a good person.
No, it says it is the specific mechanism that saves you during your own times of illness or hardship.
See, this is where it moves the framework from personal discipline into profound psychological intervention.
Yeah, and the source shares this really striking narrative to illustrate this dynamic. A local church leader, a bishop, is looking at a young man in his congregation who was just caught for drunk driving.
A highly charged situation.
Very. And the natural human reaction in that scenario is judgment, disappointment, or deep frustration, of course. Instead, the text says the bishop looks at him and instantly sees him entirely as a radiant, noble son of God.
That requires a massive, deliberate cognitive pivot in a high-stress moment.
It is a complete paradigm shift. The text advocates for what we could call God's perspective training.
Okay, I like that term.
The idea is the moment you encounter someone you intensely dislike, or someone who has made a terrible mistake, you force yourself to instantly switch your perspective and view them as a beloved, fundamentally valuable human being. It functions as a radical empathy hack.
The clinical term for this is cognitive reappraisal. You actively alter the emotional trajectory of a situation by changing the meaning you assign to it.
So you're overriding your brain's default reaction.
Precisely. Because when we experience hardship or conflict, human nature dictates that we turn inward. We hyperfixate on our own pain or the wrongs done to us, and this triggers a rumination cycle, keeping our cortisol levels elevated and our stress response active.
It operates like zooming in entirely on one muddy patch of ground with a macro camera lens, right?
Yay.
You lose the context of the entire forest because all you can see is the dirt right in front of you.
That's a brilliant way to picture it. Changing the focal lengths breaks that cycle. The text actually refers to this service in empathy as special medicine for the heart.
Special medicine.
Yeah. When you engage in cognitive reappraisal, when you actively search for the innate worth in someone difficult and focus on easing their burden, you forcibly decenter yourself.
So by trying to heal someone else's misery, you accidentally cure your own rumination.
Exactly. Your brain cannot maintain a state of highly elevated, self-centered anxiety while simultaneously executing deep, compassionate problem-solving for another person.
The neural pathways just compete with each other.
Yes, they compete. So this God's perspective training builds resilience against your own suffering by expanding your capacity to process the suffering of others.
Okay, but executing these reappraisals, maintaining the silence, acting on the promptings, this all requires a tremendous amount of time and energy. Which brings us to the fifth and final principle, which is the logistical challenge of this entire system.
Logistics are where most self-help programs go to die, honestly.
Yes, you have to prioritize what matters most, or none of it happens.
The architecture of your daily life must support the program, otherwise the concepts remain entirely theoretical.
Right. And the text provides real-world examples of people maneuvering their lives to make this work. It mentions a busy mother turning a standard church meeting into a deep meditative session.
Finding the margins in her life.
Exactly. It also highlights the practice of paying tithing, which is essentially a mandatory charitable donation of 10% of your income.
So it is a literal, tangible reallocation of your financial resources.
Yes. But the most fascinating concept the speaker drops is this highly pragmatic, almost corporate strategy for time management. They call it priority adjustment.
Applying business efficiency to spiritual and psychological growth, I love the overlap there.
It's so practical. The text suggests locking your spiritual or reflective time into your calendar before anything else. You do not try to fit it in. You literally build the day around it.
Right.
And the specific phrasing used is that you need to make God your most important client.
Ah, the most important client. That analogy operates perfectly on a psychological level because it bypasses decision fatigue.
How so?
Well, if you view your core values as something you will get to if you have time, you are relying on your prefrontal cortex to exert willpower at the end of a long day. And willpower is a heavily depletable resource.
Oh, it is like trying to run a massive system architecture update on your computer when your RAM is already maxed out by like 50 open browser
Yeah,
tabs.
right. The system just crashes and you go to sleep.
Exactly.
But think about how you treat a VIP business client. If they demand a meeting at 8 a.m., you do not debate whether you feel like going. You do not assess your energy levels. The decision is pre-made.
You just go.
The meeting goes on the calendar in permanent ink, and you organize every other variable in your day to ensure you are there.
So by labeling your highest ideal as the most important client, you entirely remove emotion and friction from your daily planning.
Exactly. You allocate your base cognitive resources before the background apps of daily life start draining your battery. The text implies that when you lock in those non-negotiable priorities first, it brings a cascading stability to the rest of the schedule.
So you aren't frantically searching for time to do your spiritual push-ups. The time is already fiercely protected.
Yeah.
Well, looking back, we really have a comprehensive, highly operational framework here. The raw intake of the spiritual inbox. Bridging faith and action by priming your brain to look for the car keys yourself.
Cultivating the silence to isolate the low-frequency signals of intuition.
That's right. Hacking your empathy to decenter your own pain. And finally, architecting your calendar around your most important client to ensure this system actually runs.
It covers the logistics, the mechanics, and the execution of personal growth in a way that leaves very little room for ambiguity.
But the speaker concludes the text with a critical plea, and I think we need to emphasize this.
What's the plea?
They say this isn't about accumulating passive knowledge. It is an active regimen. And the source explicitly asks the audience not to tackle all 5 steps at once.
Oh, that's smart. Trying to overhaul your entire life overnight just leads to immediate burnout.
Total burnout. So they ask you to pick just one of these principles to implement today. Do not try to run the entire marathon this afternoon. Just do a single push-up.
I love that. And I actually want to leave you, our listener, with a thought experiment based on that final plea.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Look at your calendar for tomorrow and pinpoint the single most frustrating task or the most difficult person you have to interact with.
We all have one.
Right. Now, what happens if you apply just one of these mechanisms to that specific stressor? If you use cognitive reappraisal to force yourself to view that difficult colleague as a radiant soul, or if you treat your own peace of mind prior to that meeting as your most important client, how does the reality of your day shift? When you change the mechanics of how you process the friction, the heavy lifting might just become the very thing that makes you stronger.